Okay, we'll end it here only because I see the SM88 and I'm got a little bit of a soft spot. So this is this is classical technology. It's this Caselabs SM88, the same case Skunkworks was. If you guys aren't aware, it looks like it's a black edition though, not a gunmetal. And I like it. It looks good.
So very excited to share that recently Jayztwocents, who does a lot of awesome builds himself, featured one of my builds on one of his videos, and he saved it for last and he really liked it. So today I'm going to talk about this build, and I also want to wish him the best of health and luck. Recently, within the last few days, I found out that he also got the human malware virus, so hopefully he's recovering and feeling better. So let's get into the video. Hey guys, Tiago with Classical Technology here. Remember to hit that thumbs up button. Remember to subscribe if you like the content. So today, let's talk about the build that I did in the Caselabs case. As I said, I submitted it to Jayztwocents. He does his series of videos where he sort of goes over different builds. And I was very excited that he actually chose my build. And he also saved it for last, and he really liked it. He liked everything from the color scheme and everything that I did with it. So certainly that made me very happy. And as I said in the intro, I also want to wish him a lot of health and a speedy recovery. Unfortunately, within the last few days, I also found out that he has the human malware. So we hope that he recovers very quickly and gets back to doing his normal videos without any interruption. So let's talk about this build that I submitted it to him. So a little background on the case itself. This is the Caselabs SMA8. Now, as you guys know, the Caselabs has gone bankrupt. The company's no longer active. You can still get a case if you're really lucky, but you're going to have to get on eBay or find a friend or some type of group that are still selling these cases, as you still cannot buy one directly from the company. I was lucky enough to get one of the last cases that they made pretty much right as they were going bankrupt. They still had stock of some of the last cases, and at first I was a little apprehensive because the case is fairly expensive, but over the time that I've had it, I've done so many builds in this case that it's truly become a very iconic case. That's how awesome that I think that this case is. I think I've done probably 20 different builds and variations of builds within this case itself. Today we're going to talk about one of the latest builds. Now, for a while I was actually waiting on the water blocks that came out for the new GPUs. As you guys know, those have been in tremendous demand. I've tried different things in this case, all the way from SLI 3090 Founders Edition GPUs, all the way down now to what I have, which is a 3090 for the Win 3 with an EK water blocks. Now, the GPU is definitely going to be the focal point of the system. First, let me tell you about the other items in this case, and then we'll tackle the GPU itself. So first, this is an X570 Godlike motherboard. Now, I initially chose this motherboard because it definitely does have a lot of features. It's one of the only motherboards that's going to support a 4-slot SLI, such as the 3090s may have, even though SLI really isn't all that great for gaming. For some rendering applications, it can be very useful. And of course, I like testing different hardware and seeing for myself the limitations and whatever is bad about SLI. So that's definitely something that I wanted to do. And on this motherboard, I have the Ryzen 5950x, which I consider to be pretty much one of the best CPUs on the market. Not only does it have tremendous multi-core performance at 16-core, 32-thread, but it's also very highly clocked for gaming. You get fantastic gaming performance. If you went with something like a Threadripper, of course you can get more cores, but you're not going to get the same gaming performance as you will with a CPU like this. And of course, another major component of this case is all of the water cooling gear. For the CPU block, I'm using the EK Water Block's magnitude block. It keeps the CPU certainly very cool. And of course, I have it paired up to an extensive array of radiators. On the bottom, there's a very thick 560mm radiator. On the front, another thick 360mm radiator. And on the top, a 480mm radiator. And of course, they all have the EK Vardar digital RGB fans. And you may say, isn't this overkill for a water-cooled system? Well, first, I don't think so, because even though, of course, there are diminishing returns, one of the things that you have to keep in mind here, the more radiator space that you have, you're going to be able to pretty much run all of these fans almost silently. They can run at their minimum RPM. I usually run them around 500 to 600 RPM, so they're pretty much not audible at all. And even at that very low RPM, you're getting bonkers cooling performance. Like, I'm telling you, the GPU stays at 42 to 43 degrees degrees Celsius, even in a room that's around 23 degrees Celsius for ambient. So it runs very cool without really having to push all of the fans very much, making it for a very cool and quiet system. And of course, a case like this has the space, so you kind of have to really fill it up without any issue. And a GPU like the 3090 for the Win 3 is going to be extremely not only power hungry, but also it generates a serious amount of heat. So let's talk about some of this GPU selection. I've tried pretty much everything in here. Previously, I had 2080 Ti and SLI, and then when the new GPUs came out, I switched over at first to a single 3090, but I've also tried with the air cooler, the EVGA for the Win 3 3090. And unfortunately, those GPUs simply do not work in a case like this. If you're going to keep them air cooled, you really need to have a very high airflow case. And as good as the Caselabs case is, and you can even make it high airflow if you want, if you take out the radiators, the way that I have it set up, it's really meant for water cooling. And that's why I was waiting on these GPU blocks. So the version that Jayztwocents looked and liked was the one that had the vertical GPU. I really like that because you get to see the block in all of its glory. And of course, you just have to be careful with the PCIe riser cable with generation 4 that you're using to make sure that you're not going to have any issues. Sometimes on the motherboard, you do have to set it to generation 3, but it looks absolutely amazing.
This is classical technology. It's this Caselabs SM88, the same case Skunkworks was, if you guys aren't aware. It looks like it's a black edition though, not a gunmetal. 570 Godlike, AMD 5950x, 3090 for the Win 3. It's funny. I have to wonder, I've always wondered like how much our videos actually inspire people to do things a certain way. So there's that same black tubing we use from EK water blocks. Here's the EK fittings. They're not black with the red ring, but they're the same fittings and the silver, which looks really good with the setup. It's kind of an ultraviolet sort of a color with the green. I like violet and green or purple and green, however you want to call it. This has the same reservoir we used in yours, you know, only we have a 240, that's a 360. And I like it. It looks good.
And he doesn't have to worry about his RAM changing colors.
No, he doesn't, because he used the Dominator Platinums, the older ones, which are just the silver tops, which I love those RAM sticks. They're just a little slow now at like 3,000 to 3,200. He's using the Hardware Labs radiators and look at the black ice. That might even be the GTR in the front. Looks good.
But of course, being the enthusiast that I am, even though I know that SLI really doesn't have any interesting returns, I have the second 3090, so I really wanted to try it in SLI using the EK Scalar Bridge, basically to connect the two blocks. Now, this case has more than enough cooling performance to handle not only the CPU, but also the two SLI 3090 GPUs. But truth be told, SLI did give me a lot more issues than I was really looking for to be able to fix and diagnose over time. A lot of times the GPU, if it's not in perfectly, especially with the second card, if the bridge isn't in perfectly, I got a lot of errors at times, like VGA errors and things like that. So I don't know if it's the motherboard and the PCIe slots. It seemed to work fine on the X299 Rampage 6 motherboard that I had with SLI. I had many less issues with that, but for some reason this X570 Godlike motherboard did give me a lot of issues, and basically all those issues kind of focus on maybe a certain GPU, maybe the first or second one at times not being recognized by the system. Sometimes the first would work, other times the second would, sometimes both would work and I could actually activate SLI in the Nvidia control panel. Sometimes they would work and you would see that they're there, but when I try to put SLI on, they just wouldn't work. So that's why, at least for now, I decided to just put it back to the horizontal position with one GPU. That way you don't have to worry about riser cable issues, you don't have to worry about SLI issues, and the system is considerably more reliable. Like, imagine if you put your system to PCIe generation 3 and that's the only way that it worked, but then you have to do a BIOS update. On a water-cooled system, you're gonna have to take everything apart and rebuild it. So it's definitely not the best way to go if it's a system that you're gonna have to use often. So for now, I'm gonna leave it in the horizontal position. While vertically, it does aesthetically look better because you get to see the block. It looks really awesome. And that's the version of the build that I sent over to Jayztwocents for him to take a look at. You do block your motherboard and you can't access anything at all. So if you have to access any of the M.2 slots that are in this motherboard lower down, you can't can't do any of that. Even to plug in a cable, like a USB cable on the motherboard, or like one of the RGB cables in case you switch something out, becomes a very difficult task when you have the vertical GPU mounted. If it's there horizontally, you have a lot better access to the motherboard. So that's definitely one of the caveats. It looks great vertically, but it's very hard to work as a daily system when you have it like that. So sometimes you have to make a little bit of a compromise in terms of the aesthetics in order to get a better user experience. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you this build a little bit, different versions that I did of it. I was very happy once again that Jayztwocents really liked it on his channel. I definitely look up to him and his builds. He's done some great builds himself. And once again, we wish him a speedy recovery. So remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.